You know when someone comes back from a vacation and they just seem different? That was my wife, Kelsey, after her girls' trip to Miami last month. She had this glow, but not the kind that comes from a beach tan and spa days. It was more like she'd left something behind and felt free. She was lighter, smiling at her phone way more than usual, laughing at messages that she wouldn't let me see, acting like she had some kind of inside joke with someone I wasn't invited to be part of. Now, I'm not the jealous type. We've been married for 5 years, dated for 2 before that. I've always trusted her. She and her friends take these trips maybe once or twice a year. Some beach destination, a bunch of Instagram pics, cocktails, matching robes, the whole vibe. No big deal. But this time, something was different. When she walked in the door, I noticed 2 things. First, she didn't hug me like she usually does. Just a quick peck and a distracted, "Hey, babe." Then she pulled out her phone and just started scrolling, giggling. "No, I missed you." No stories about the trip. Just locked it on her screen like she couldn't wait to get back to whatever she left behind. Over the next few days, I kept noticing little things. She changed her phone's password, said it was because her friend lost her phone on the trip, and she didn't want the same thing to happen to her. Reasonable. But she also started sleeping with it under her pillow. She started wearing perfume to go run errands. She began taking longer showers and always brought her phone with her into the bathroom. The worst part? She was nice. Too nice. Bringing me coffee in the mornings, texting me random compliments during the day. It wasn't her usual affection. It felt more like guilt wrapped in sugar. Then came the moment that really cracked it open. She had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. It buzzed with a notification from her messaging app. A preview popped up, and it wasn't subtle. It was a message from a contact named Jay. Just a letter, and it read, "I can still taste you." I stared at that message like the air got sucked out of the room. I didn't click anything. I didn't open the laptop. I just stood there, heart pounding, thinking, there's no way this is real. This has to be some sick joke. But it wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I just watched her as she slept, peacefully, like nothing in the world could bother her. Meanwhile, I was spiraling, questioning everything. Our whole relationship, every trip she'd taken, every time she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't confront her that night. I wanted to have proof, to know for sure before I said something I couldn't take back. So I started watching. And what I found out in the following days would turn everything upside down. So after seeing that message, "I can still taste you," I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know what was really going on. Now, I'm not proud of what I did next, but I was desperate for answers. I waited until Kelsey was in the shower again the next night. Her laptop was still on the counter. I opened it, hands shaking, and started digging. The app she was using wasn't one of the common ones. It was one of those low-key messaging platforms people use when they don't want their conversations to be seen. The icon didn't stand out. The name was generic. Exactly the kind of thing you'd overlook if you weren't looking for trouble. Once I got into it, it was like I opened a window into a whole other version of my wife I didn't recognize. There were dozens of messages between her and Jay. Some recent, some from during the Miami trip, and some that went way back, weeks before she even mentioned the idea of taking a trip with her friends. They weren't talking about business. They weren't talking about friends. They were talking about each other, what they want to do next time they met, how they miss each other, how they couldn't wait to feel that again. At one point, he even asked her, "Is your husband starting to suspect anything?" And she replied, "He's too sweet. I just act a little extra nice when I get back, and he doesn't ask questions." I just sat there staring at the screen, jaw clenched, stomach twisted. My face was hot. My ears were ringing. You know that feeling when you realize you've been played, and the person who's doing it knows exactly how to keep you blind? That's where I was. But I still didn't say anything. Not yet. I needed a name, a face, something concrete. So I kept going. And that's when I found the photo. Just one, tucked deep in their message thread. But it was enough. It was the two of them, poolside, drinks in hand. He had his arm around her waist like he'd done it 100 times. She was wearing the same bikini she posted on Instagram, but cropped so only her and the other girls were visible. This version showed the whole scene. It was clearly a different trip than she described to me. She'd told me it was all spa days and brunches with her friends. No guys, no clubs, just quality time with the girls. Lies. All of it. The guy, Jay, turned out to be someone she'd met at a work conference a year before. I recognized his name from an old LinkedIn conversation she once showed me. She said he was just a contact, someone she barely knew. Turns out she knew him well enough to meet up in another state and spend 3 nights together while I was home, walking our dog and ordering DoorDash for one. That night, I couldn't even sleep in our bed. I sat on the couch in the dark, just empty. It wasn't even full-blown rage at that point. It was worse than that. It was the kind of hurt that makes your chest feel hollow, like your whole life was just a script written by someone else, and they forgot to include you in the story. I kept asking myself, how long has she been lying to me? Was any of it ever real? The worst part is, when you love someone that deeply, there's a part of you that still wants to believe it was just a mistake. Like, maybe if I'd done something differently, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But the truth was right there. In text, in pictures, in her own words. And I knew, no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't unsee it. A few days passed after I found everything. The messages, the photos, the truth. I didn't bring it up right away. I know that might sound weird, but I needed to calm down first. I didn't want to explode and end up yelling or saying something that would just give her an excuse to spin it all on me. I wanted to go in clear-headed. So that Saturday morning, I made her breakfast, like I usually do, and sat down across from her at the table. I watched her scroll through her phone, totally relaxed, like nothing in the world could shake her. And then I said it just like this. "Hey, who's Jay?" She froze, didn't blink, didn't breathe, just sat there for a second, like her brain hit pause. Then she laughed, actually laughed, and said, "What are you talking about?" I looked her dead in the eye and repeated, "You know who I'm talking about. I saw the messages, the ones on your laptop. I know about Miami. I know he was there." Her face changed instantly. The color drained out of it. She tried to play dumb at first, said maybe it was a friend of a friend. Maybe I was reading something out of context. But I wasn't in the mood for games. I told her I'd seen everything, that I knew it had been going on for a while. I told her about the picture, the messages, the part where she told him I was too sweet to catch on. That's when she got defensive. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She got cold. She said, "Why were you looking through my stuff?" That's a huge invasion of privacy. That was her first concern. Not that she betrayed me. Not that she lied or cheated or broke our vows, but that I invaded her privacy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She tried spinning it like we'd been distant, like she was confused, like this other guy made her feel seen. Said she didn't plan for it to happen, but things just got complicated. I asked her straight up if she loved him. She said no. I asked if she was still seeing him. She paused too long. I asked if it happened before this last trip, and she finally admitted it had. Not just Miami. It had started months ago. I think that's when something in me shut off. Like a switch flipped. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a full-on secret life, and I had just been a guy in the background keeping the house running while she chased something else. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood up, walked out of the room, and sat in the car for a while. I didn't cry. I wanted to. I felt like I should have. But it was like my body was too numb to do anything. Eventually, she came outside and asked me what I was going to do. I told her I didn't know yet, but that things weren't going back to how they were. Not this time. And definitely not after everything I now knew. The weirdest part about finding out someone you love has been lying to you, it's how quiet everything feels afterward. No dramatic music. No big breakdown. Just this weird stillness, like the world hit pause and forgot to tell you. That's what the next few days felt like. Just silence, inside and out. After the confrontation, Kelsey stayed in the house. She said she wanted to talk things through, figure out where we stood. But I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't even look at her. without seeing those messages. Seeing him. Every time she spoke, it felt like I had to remind myself not to snap. Not because I was angry, though yeah, I was, but because I just couldn't process that the same person I married was capable of something like this. And she didn't really help her case. She kept going back and forth. One minute saying she wanted to fix things, the next trying to justify what she did, saying she felt invisible or that she lost herself in the routine. She even said, "You've been so focused on work and life stuff lately. It's like we stopped being a couple." That one hit hard, because I had been working a lot. Long hours, late nights. But not because I didn't care. I was trying to build a future for us. Buy a house, maybe start a family. All the things we talked about. Apparently, while I was planning a life, she was planning escapes. I started avoiding home. Drove around for hours after work. Sat in parking lots. Drinking drive-through coffee, just so I wouldn't have to walk in the door and pretend like things weren't broken. I told a couple of my closest friends what happened, and the looks on their faces said it all. Shock, sure, but also sympathy. The kind people give when they know your life just split into two parts, before and after. And the thing that crushed me the most? She didn't even seem that heartbroken. Like, yeah, she cried when I confronted her. But after that, she was calm, too calm, like she was already emotionally packed and halfway out the door. It made me wonder just how long she'd been checked out of our relationship before I ever caught on. I kept trying to figure out what I did wrong. Was I boring? Was I not affectionate enough? Did I miss something obvious? You start picking apart every memory, looking for the cracks that maybe were always there. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me falling short. This was about her making a choice. Repeatedly. You can't accidentally lie to someone every day for months. You don't trip and fall into someone else's hotel room while your spouse is home thinking about what takeout to order. It was a choice. And once I fully accepted that, something inside me started to shift. I wasn't healed, not even close, but I could feel that first little thread of clarity. Like I was slowly waking up from a long, bad dream. I stopped asking why she did it and started asking myself what I deserved going forward. A week after confrontation, I finally did something I'd been putting off. I asked her to leave. Not permanently, not yet. I wasn't ready to say the words divorce out loud, but I needed space. Real space. Not sleeping in separate rooms. Not quiet tension over takeout containers. I needed her out of the house so I could think. She pushed back at first. Said I was making things worse. That we should be talking, not hiding from each other. But I wasn't hiding. I was trying to breathe, and I told her that straight up. I said, "You had months to lie and sneak around. You've already had all the space in the world to do what you wanted. Now I need mine." She moved out 2 days later, took a suitcase and some essentials, and went to stay at her sister's place. Said it was temporary. But the second she walked out that door, I felt something shift. It was like this giant pressure lifted off my chest. I could finally walk around my own house without wondering what secret was hiding behind every smile. No fake goodnights. No pretending. Just quiet. And this time it felt like peace. I still had bad days. I'd see her mug in the cabinet and feel like I got punched in the gut. Or I'd hear a song on a playlist we made together and have to pull over because the memories hit too hard. Grief, I guess, not just for the marriage, but for the version of her I thought was real. One night, I was scrolling through old pictures on my phone, anniversaries, vacations, random selfies from our couch. I wasn't even trying to torture myself. I don't know. I wanted to remind myself that it was real once, that we did love each other. But the more I looked, the more I noticed things I never saw before. How often she was looking away from the camera. How many photos were just me pulling her into a smile. How many times she looked distracted, like she was already gone, even then. And I had this moment of realization. I was holding on to a memory, not a marriage. That's when I started writing stuff down. Not just the things she did, but how I felt each day. What hurt, what helped, what made me feel a little stronger. I wasn't planning to share it with anyone, but it helped. It helped a lot. One of the first things I wrote, she betrayed me, yeah, but I don't have to betray myself by staying stuck in it. That line became sort of a guidepost. Every time I felt myself slipping back into that place, where I'd start wondering what she was doing, or if she missed me, or if this was somehow my fault, I'd come back to that sentence. I'd remember that no matter what happens next, I still get to choose the kind of man I want to be. Someone bitter or someone better. And honestly, I was leaning hard toward better. About 2 weeks after Kelsey moved out, I was starting to feel a little more like myself. I wasn't healed, not even close, but I was functioning, sleeping better, eating real meals again, getting back into the gym, even went out for drinks with some buddies for the first time in a while, just trying to reclaim little parts of my life that had been in limbo. Then, out of nowhere, she texted me, "Can we talk? I've been thinking a lot." I'll admit it, I stared at that message way too long. I didn't know what I wanted from her at that point. Part of me was curious. Part of me was done. But I said yeah. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop near where we used to live before we got married. Neutral territory. She walked in like she hadn't just blown up our lives 6 weeks ago. Fresh makeup, hair curled, wearing that sweater I bought her for Christmas. And she smiled like she thought this was going to be some kind of movie moment where we lock eyes and realize we're still in love. Instead, I stayed seated, calm, quiet, and I let her talk. She started with the usual, said she missed me, that she'd made a mistake, that she didn't realize what she had until she lost it. She said the other guy wasn't real, that it was more about escaping than connecting, that she wanted to come home. I listened, let her get it all out. Then I asked her the question I couldn't stop thinking about. If I hadn't found out, would you have stopped? She didn't answer right away. Just looked down at her coffee, like the answer was hiding in the foam. Then she said, "I don't know. Maybe not." And there it was. The honesty I asked for. The one answer I didn't want but definitely needed. That conversation changed everything. I realized in that moment. She didn't come back because she was sorry. She came back because I stopped chasing her. Because I wasn't begging. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the guy she thought she could always have waiting in the wings. And suddenly, she was the one scared being left behind. When I told her I wasn't ready to let her move back in, her mood flipped fast. No more soft voice. No more apologetic eyes. She got frustrated. Accused me of giving up too soon, of punishing her. Said I was being cold. I said, "I'm not being cold. I'm protecting myself. You should have done that for me before you got involved with someone else." She didn't know what to say to that. We ended the conversation without a hug. No tearful goodbye. Just an awkward silence and a half-hearted, "Let me know if you change your mind." But here's the thing. I wasn't going to change my mind. Something inside me had already shifted. I wasn't looking at her through the same lens anymore. I saw her for what she really was, flawed, confused, and selfish in ways I didn't want to build a life around anymore. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt free. After that last coffee shop meetup with Kelsey, I knew I couldn't keep living in limbo. I needed to start making real moves. So I booked an appointment with a lawyer. Just a consultation. Nothing binding. I wanted to understand what things would look like if this did end in divorce. What I'd be dealing with legally, financially, emotionally. I didn't tell Kelsey right away. I just needed information. I needed clarity before I made the biggest decision of my life. But before I could even decide how I wanted to handle things, the news got out. Kelsey told her sister everything. I guess she needed a vent, or maybe she was trying to control the narrative before I did. But within days, mutual friends started reaching out. Some of them were gentle about it, just checking in, saying they heard we were going through something. Others weren't so subtle. One of my old college buddies, who happens to be married to one of her friends, texted me out of nowhere and said, "Man, I'm sorry. I heard what you did. That's rough." I hadn't even told him. Word was spreading fast. Then my mom found out. Not from me. From my aunt, who heard it from someone else's wife. Small town vibes, even though we live in a decent-sized city. My mom called me that night, voice trembling, asking, "What happened? I thought you two were happy." And there was again, I thought you two were happy. That sentence kept hitting me like a brick every time someone said it. Because yeah, so did I. Explaining it to people was weird, embarrassing, even not because I did anything wrong, but because the whole situation made me feel like a fool. Like I was the last person in the room to realize the building was on fire. And not everyone took my side, by the way. Some people, mostly from her side, started floating the "it takes two" narrative. One of her cousins even had the nerve to message me saying, "Don't throw away a good thing just because she messed up once. Everyone slips." I didn't reply, because what do you even say to that? Everyone slips? This wasn't a stumble. This was a carefully planned, months-long betrayal. You don't slip into someone else's bed in another state while texting your spouse that you love them. But the thing that hurt the most? One of my friends, someone I'd known since high school, told me I should just forgive her and move on. He said, "You've been together a long time, man. You really want to start over from scratch?" As if the years we spent together somehow made her betrayal less serious. As if the length of the relationship should outweigh the damage she did to it. That's when I realized people are way more comfortable asking you to tolerate pain than they're supporting you when you say, "I deserve better." And yeah, starting over is terrifying. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But waking up next to someone who lied to me for months, who let me believe we were solid while building a second life on the side, that felt worse. So I called the lawyer back, told him I wanted to move forward. So I finally worked up the nerve to tell her. We met at a neutral spot again, same coffee shop as before. I figured it was better than doing it at the house or over the phone. I wanted to be respectful, even if she hadn't been. I wanted to walk out of this with a clear conscience. She walked in acting hopeful, like maybe I'd come to say I was ready to start over, to give her another shot. The second she sat down, she started talking about how much she missed me, how she'd been thinking about getting us into couples therapy, how she looked up retreats that could help us reconnect. I let her talk for a few minutes. Then I gently said, "I've decided to move forward with a divorce." Her face didn't move for a full 5 seconds. It was like her brain refused to process the words. Then she blinked, tilted her head a little, and said, "You're not serious." I nodded. "I am." That's when the switch flipped. Her whole vibe changed. Gone was the sweet, guilty, apologetic version of her. Suddenly, it was full-blown anger, accusations, deflection. She leaned across the table and started whisper hissing, like we were on some kind of reality show. "So that's it? You're just giving up? After everything we've been through?" I kept my voice calm. I said, "I'm not giving up. I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing not to live in a relationship that was built on lies. That's not giving up, that's moving on." Then came the personal jabs. She said I was too sensitive, that I was using this as an excuse to run away from responsibility, that I was the reason she started looking elsewhere in the first place. Apparently, because I worked too much and didn't always make her feel seen. I asked her, "So instead of talking to me, you decided to go behind my back?" And she said, "I didn't think you'd care enough to change." That one hit hard, because I would have. If she'd told me she felt neglected, I would have adjusted my schedule. I would have made time. I would have done the work. But instead of giving me that chance, she gave someone else everything I thought we were building. After about 10 minutes of back and forth, she stormed out, left her drink on the table, didn't even say goodbye, just walked out like the wounded one, like I was a villain in her version of the story. I sat there for a few more minutes, just breathing, processing. And you know what? I felt okay. Not great, not happy, but okay. Because even though it hurt like hell, I'd finally made a real decision for me. I stopped waiting for her to come around, to wake up, to realize what she'd done. I stopped waiting for closure from someone who didn't even close the door when she walked out of my life the first time. This was my closure. And I knew there would be fallout. Family, friends, money, emotions. But none of that scared me more than staying in something that made me feel small. Once I told Kelsey I was going through the divorce. Things shifted fast, and not in a peaceful way. She stopped pretending she wanted to fix things. That We can still work this out. Attitude disappeared overnight. It was like the moment she realized I was serious. The real version of her, the one she kept carefully hidden, finally came out. First came the silence. She didn't reach out. No texts, no calls, nothing. At first, I thought maybe she was processing. Maybe it finally hit her. But then I started getting messages from other people, mutual friends, even a few of her coworkers, saying things like, "Hey, man, I heard you just bailed on the marriage out of nowhere. What happened?" One of them even said Kelsey told him I had emotionally abandoned her for months and that she tried to save the relationship, but I was checked out and refused therapy. She was rewriting the story, painting herself as the one who got left behind, the one who tried, the one who suffered. And look, I knew people were going to take sides. That's just how breakups work. But the way she spun it, it was next level. She made it sound like I just woke up one day and decided to blow up our life for fun. Then came the lawyer drama. My lawyer reached out to hers to start drafting the basic divorce terms. Nothing complicated. We didn't have kids, and most of our finances were split already. The house was in my name before we got married. But then her lawyer sent back a list of requests. Kelsey wanted half of my retirement savings, some of the equity in my house, reimbursement for money she'd invested during our marriage, stuff like vacations and furniture. I just stare at the list like, "You've got to be kidding me." This woman cheated, lied, hit a full-blown second relationship, and now she wanted to cash out like she was owed something? My lawyer was just as shocked. He told me flat out, "They're posturing. Don't panic. We'll respond." But it wasn't about the money. It was the principle. She blew up our marriage, and now she wanted to act like I was the one who owed her. It lit something in me I didn't know I had, resolve. For the first time, I felt angry in a productive way, not the kind of anger that makes you break stuff or scream into the void, the kind that makes you laser-focused. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped wondering if I was being too harsh or giving up too soon. No, I was done being the nice guy she could manipulate. This wasn't about getting revenge. This was about protecting my peace, my future, and I was ready to fight for it. Still, even with all that resolve, I couldn't lie. It hurt, knowing that the person you once trusted most now sees you as something to beat, a battle to win, a source of cash and blame. But I reminded myself every day, she made her choices. Now she's living with the consequences. And so was I. If there's one thing this whole experience has taught me, it's that betrayal doesn't always come from the person you expect. And support doesn't always come from where you think it will. After Kelsey started telling people her version of things, I honestly wasn't sure who believed me. She's always been good with people, charismatic, knows how to tell a story that puts her in the best light. And honestly, a lot of people bought it, at least at first. One of the hardest parts? Seeing some of my people hesitate. Friends I'd known for years, guys I'd helped move, stood beside at weddings, shared late-night talks with. They stayed weirdly quiet. They didn't ask me what really happened. They didn't check in. They just went silent. One even unfollowed me on social media after Kelsey posted some vague story about people giving up when things get hard. Like what? That's enough for you to just write me off? But then there were the ones who really showed up. My buddy Nate, for example. He called me every single day that first week after she moved out. Didn't matter if I wanted to talk or not. He'd just say, "You don't have to talk, just know I'm here," and sit on the phone with me while I stared at the wall. My sister flew in from 2 states away, stayed with me for a weekend, cooked real meals, and just listened. No judgment, no advice unless I asked. Just listened. I'll never forget that. Even my barber gave me some of the best advice I've ever gotten. I walked in looking like I hadn't slept in a month, and he just said, "You gonna let her break you or you gonna rebuild better?" Simple, but it hit hard. And then there were the unexpected ones. People I hadn't talked to in years started reaching out. An old coworker sent me a message that said, "Hey man, I went through something similar. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." We ended up grabbing a drink and swapping stories. He's been divorced for a couple years now, and the way he talked about how things turn around for him, It gave me hope. Real hope. But even with all the support, there were still moments that sucked. Like the time I ran into one of Kelsey's friends at a grocery store, and she gave me that look. Like I was a villain in some drama she only knew half the script to. She didn't say anything, just gave a tight smile and kept walking, but man, it stung. Or when I went to a mutual friend's birthday party, and it felt like everyone was walking on eggshells around me. Like I was this ticking emotional time bomb they didn't know how to handle. I get to a point. People don't like messy. They like clean stories, easy sides to pick. But life's not like that. Relationships aren't like that. And it made me realize I didn't need a lot of people in my corner. I just needed a few real ones. The kind who check in, not out. The kind who aren't afraid to say, yeah, that sucks, but you're not alone. And if you're going through something like this, my advice, don't waste time chasing the people who disappeared. Focus on the ones who stayed. They're your people. So by this point, the paperwork was almost done. We were deep into the divorce process. Lawyers going back and forth. Negotiations getting petty over things like who keeps what furniture. I was mentally exhausted, but felt like I was nearing the finish line. Like I could finally move on and start over. And then Kelsey did something that almost pulled me right back into the storm. Out of the blue, my lawyer calls me and says, hey, just a heads up, Kelsey's side submitted a statement saying you were emotionally abusive during the marriage. I just sat there, stunned. What? He kept reading. She claimed I controlled her schedule, that I was dismissive, that I undermined her independence. Basically, painting me as this possessive, manipulative husband who made her feel trapped. It was like reading about someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. Because that's not who I am. And it's definitely not how I treated her. Now, look, no relationship is perfect. We had disagreements. We both made mistakes. But emotional abuse? I bent over backwards for this woman. I supported her career, encouraged her trips with friends, cooked dinner most nights, even picked up her dry cleaning without being asked. I trusted her. Too much, apparently. And now, when she didn't get what she wanted from the divorce, this was her next move? I was furious. Not just because of the lie, but because of what it meant. That she was willing to throw my character under the bus to try and get leverage. That she'd use real, serious language that some people face in actual abusive relationships just to get ahead in court. It made me sick. My lawyer, thankfully, wasn't fazed. He said this kind of thing happens more often than people think, that sometimes when one party doesn't get their way, they go nuclear. But it wasn't just about strategy to me. It was personal. This woman knew exactly how much I cared about being a decent person. She knew my biggest fear was being misunderstood, being seen as someone I'm not, and she weaponized that. So yeah, I broke down that night. Not because I thought her accusations would stick. They didn't. I had proof of how I treated her, messages, photos, even testimonies from friends who saw how things really were between us. But it broke me a little inside to know that someone who once called me her best friend could try to destroy me like that. After that, I went no contact. Fully. No texts. No checking in. Nothing. I let the lawyers handle everything. She crossed a line I couldn't walk back from. The scary part is, if I didn't have solid support, if I didn't have good people backing me, or if I hadn't been documenting everything, she could have wrecked my life with a few words in a legal document. That's when I realized how close I came to being buried under someone else's lie. And I'm telling you right now, if you're ever in a situation like this, document everything. Save the receipts. Keep the screenshots, even if you think it's unnecessary. Because sometimes the person who said, I love you, will become the person who tries to ruin you. Once we crossed that legal milestone, once the statement she submitted got thrown out and the divorce paperwork was finally finalized, something strange happened. I woke up the next morning, and the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. No more emails from lawyers. No more back-and-forth arguments over plates and furniture, and who gets to keep the air fryer. Yes, she really tried to argue for the air fryer. It was done, and for the first time in a long time, I started looking forward instead of back. I didn't expect everything to magically get better. It wasn't like the wait just vanished. But it shifted. Instead of feeling like I was dragging the past behind me, it started to feel like something I could walk away from. I started doing things for me again. I picked up guitar lessons, something I hadn't touched since college. Started running in the mornings just to clear my head. Reconnected with old friends I hadn't talked to in years. Not because I needed a vent, but just to exist around people who reminded me of who I was before all of this. I even took a weekend trip. Just me. No plans, no agenda. I drove out to the mountains, stayed in a tiny cabin with no Wi-Fi, and just sat with myself for a while. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like I was living on defense. And yeah, I cried, but it wasn't sadness, it was relief. Gratitude, even, because somehow, after everything that happened, after being betrayed, lied to, blamed, I was still here, still standing, still me. I think one of the hardest truths I had to accept was that closure doesn't always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes it's just something you have to give yourself. There was no apology from Kelsey that made any of it okay. No explanation that made it easier to swallow. She never really took responsibility. Not fully. And it used to eat me up. I wanted her to get it. To feel the weight of what she did. But eventually I realized that's not my job. My job is to protect my peace, to rebuild, to make sure I never again settle for someone who takes me for granted. It's wild, you know? When we were together, I thought my life was set. I thought I had the whole picture. Love, stability, a future. But now, on the other side of it, I can see that the version I was living in was just a highlight reel. Carefully curated, carefully maintained. Now, it's not perfect. But it's real, and I'd take real over fake any day. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I started noticing something I hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. Not about Kelsey, not anymore. I stopped checking her socials. Stopped wondering who she was texting. Stopped caring what version of the story she was telling to make herself look better. That chapter was closed. Burned. Even. No. This curiosity was about people. About what was next, about who might be out there. I wasn't rushing into anything. Honestly, I wasn't sure I ever wanted a serious relationship again, but I also didn't want the mess she left behind to be the reason I locked the door forever. So, yeah, I made a dating profile. Just one, just to dip a toe in. At first, it felt weird, like I was pretending to be someone else, someone who hadn't been through a crash and burn marriage. But then I realized I wasn't pretending. I was just healing, rebuilding, and I had a right to that. I matched with a few people. Some conversations went nowhere, others were just meh. But then I met someone, let's call her Emily. We grabbed coffee. No pressure, just two people talking about life. She had her own history, her own scars. And maybe that's what made it work. There was no pretending. No highlight reel, just honesty. I didn't tell her everything on the first date. I didn't dump the whole story in her lap. But I did tell her I'd been through something heavy, that I wasn't here to play games. And you know what she said? Good. Me neither. It wasn't some grand spark or movie moment. It was peaceful, comfortable. I laughed the first time in what felt like forever. Not polite, awkward laughter. Real, belly deep, forget the pain kind of laughter. We've been seeing each other casually, taking it slow. And I'm not saying she's the one, or that I'm ready to start handing out rings again. But being with her reminded me of something I forgot along the way. I still have love to give. Kelsey didn't take that from me. She just taught me to be more careful about who I give it to. Healing doesn't look like waking up one day completely over it. It looks like driving past your old favorite restaurant and not feeling that lump in your throat anymore. It looks like hearing a song that used to wreck you and realizing you can just enjoy it again. It looks like giving someone new a chance and giving yourself permission to start over, even if you're still scared. Because, yeah, I'm still scared. But I'm also hopeful. And after everything, that's a big deal. There's this moment that sticks with me. It wasn't anything big, not some dramatic epiphany or emotional breakdown. I was just standing in my kitchen, making breakfast on a random Saturday. Same spot where Kelsey used to scroll through her phone, like I didn't exist. But that morning, the sun was coming through the window just right. I had music playing low, and my dog was curled up on the rug by my feet. I was alone, and I felt good. Not good like everything's fixed, but good in a quiet, steady way. Safe, like my life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. That's when it really hit me. I hadn't just gotten over a broken marriage. I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece. I went through the darkest, messiest, most confusing season of my life. I was lied to, blamed, gaslit, and nearly dragged through legal hell. I questioned everything, my judgment, my self-worth, even my sanity. But I came out stronger, not bitter, not closed off, just wiser. And I think that's the part people don't talk about enough when they go through something like this. Everyone wants to ask, are you over it? Did you find someone new? Are you happier now? But the real question is, did you learn who you are when everything fell apart? Because that's what matters. I learned that I'm not weak for trusting someone, that being loving, supportive, and loyal isn't a flaw. It's a strength. I learned that some people will take advantage of those qualities. But that doesn't mean I should stop showing up that way. I just need to show up that way for the right people. I also learned that closure doesn't always come in the form of a neat conversation or an apology. Sometimes, closure looks like cooking breakfast in your own kitchen, playing your own music, and realizing this is enough. I've still got work to do. Still have moments where it hits me out of nowhere. But I don't carry it like I used to. It doesn't own me anymore. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something like this, it's this. Don't rush your healing. You don't owe anyone a timeline. You don't have to bounce back with a perfect Instagram-ready life. It's okay to take your time, to sit in the grief, to be angry, to cry, to rebuild slow. But don't stay stuck in what someone else did to you. You deserve more than that. If I could go back and talk to the version of me from the night I found that message, the one that said, I can still taste you, I wouldn't tell him to brace for impact. I'd tell him, you're going to be okay. Because back then, I didn't believe it. I thought my life was over. I thought that message shattered everything I'd built. And yeah, it did blow it all up, but now I realize it didn't end me. It freed me. That night, I was pacing the kitchen, heart racing, scared out of my mind. Not just of the betrayal, but of the unknown, of starting over, of being alone. But here's what I know now. Being alone is so much better than being with someone who makes you feel alone when you're sitting right next to them. I've learned that trust is a gift, one of the most sacred things we give. And if someone takes that gift and breaks it like it's nothing, you don't have to keep handing it back to them. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to protect your heart. I've also learned that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy of real love. You don't have to always smile or always say the right thing or have it all figured out. You just have to be honest with yourself and with the people you let into your life. To anyone listening to this right now, maybe sitting in the same spot I was, staring at a phone, reading something you can't unsee, feeling your world fall apart, I want you to hear this. You are not weak for hurting. You are not foolish for trusting. And you are not broken beyond repair. You're going through something that hurts. But that pain is teaching you something. It's shaping you, not into someone colder or harder, but into someone stronger, clearer, and more intentional about who they give their heart to. The end of that relationship wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of me figuring out who I really am. And honestly, I like this version of me way better. So here's to starting over, to healing, even when it's messy, to laughing again, loving again, trusting again, carefully but not fearfully. Here's to choosing peace over chaos, truth over comfort, and yourself over someone who didn't choose you when it counted. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with you. Thank you all for listening to this story until the end. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any new episodes.